I'm Matt at Nexus Baseball, and this is episode 26 of the Tommy John Epidemic. This series is a YouTube read of content from the book Plague of the Gods, an outsider's perspective on baseball's Tommy John epidemic, which is available now on Amazon. I decided to put this content on YouTube to make the material as accessible as possible. This series examines the science behind the most superhuman action the human body can produce, accelerating a baseball up to 100 miles per hour. It is also quite difficult to heal and strengthen the ligament naturally due to the lack of direct blood flow to ligaments. Ligaments do not have the direct blood flow that muscles do to provide the fill and pressures of contraction. Instead, they must rely on related structures nearby. With scarce blood flow, healing can be quite slow, hence the utility of electric stimulation devices and pressure for recovery to provide constant blood flow over the tissues. Platelet-rich plasma therapy, or PRP, does an end run around the body's healing systems, attempting to deliver healing platelets directly to the ligament. There's a lot of evidence that this is an effective treatment for ligaments, but the degree of benefit over natural healing is still unclear. Regardless, the slow process of ligament healing may take days or weeks, with substantial thickening of the ligaments taking years. In sport, this process can be accomplished by doing exercises that force the body to adapt and thicken the ligaments along with growing the muscles to provide the necessary support system. This need for muscular control to provide the ligament support is likely the primary reason that ASMI's results found that pitching through fatigue is a primary link to UCL damage. If the muscles are fatigued, then the ligaments must do more work to provide support and are more likely to be damaged. The most prominent example, in my opinion, of the integral role of the muscles in supporting the elbow against valgus stress, and inversely its lack of use as a force generator, is the medical case of former Cy Young Award winner R.A. Dickey. Dickey was drafted out of college and offered a large signing bonus by the Texas Rangers. After the team had seen Dickey holding his elbow at a strange angle on a magazine cover, they ordered MRIs on his pitching elbow. Dr. Andrews of ASMI read the MRIs and discovered that Dickey did not possess a UCL. It was not damaged. It was non-existent. Andrews speculated that he was born without one, or that more likely it had been so damaged that it had died off and been reabsorbed by the body during childhood. What is so interesting about this is that Dickey at the time was able to hit 95 miles per hour on his fastball, elite velocity even today. Dickey speculates he simply developed the muscular control to stabilize the arm without it. This shows clearly that the UCL cannot be a force generator and that the arm muscles must be responsible for correct stabilization, not the UCL in the pitching motion. The Rangers pulled their large draft bonus as they thought Dickey was damaged goods. He would go on to pitch in professional baseball for 2 decades, including winning the highest pitching awards. The question then becomes, where is the force coming from to throw a baseball with so much velocity? Returning to the kinetic chain in overhand pitching, which is being used for our purposes as a summation of the existing science, the legs and trunk are said to serve as the main force generators of the kinetic chain. These forces are transferred up the trunk and into the shoulder and finally into the hand. The key section of the work when looking at where velocity is generated is a summary of an earlier EMG study examining the differences in muscle activation between professional and youth pitchers conducted by Frank Jobe et al. In 1987. The study only looked at the shoulder area, not the legs, but presents that professional pitchers primarily use the subscapularis and latissimus dorsi muscles for shoulder acceleration, whereas amateurs use the other rotator cuff muscles more, as well as the pectoralis minor and less of the lat. Likewise, the professionals use their bicep less in the motion compared to the amateurs and have less maximum shoulder rotation and forward trunk tilt. This might sound very convoluted and unintuitive, but is a necessary jumping off point for discussion of force generation and ultimately its impact on the UCL, as this information has informed the training of the current generation of pitchers. To present this in a more concise manner, it is the current understanding that forces from the ground create hip rotation, followed by torso rotation, which then propels the shoulder blade, the scapula, forward, causing the arm to fly backwards into external rotation. The subscapularis and lat muscles then accelerate the arm forward into overhead release. However, the EMG studies look at muscle activation, not force generation. There has been no study that could purport to determine if the glute does more work than the lat muscle in the throwing motion, for example, just which ones are getting the strongest signals. Also, what is the brain telling the muscle? To contract to create force or to maintain stability? As an example, if I flex my bicep as hard as possible and keep it in position, I'm producing no work energy as there is no motion. This is due to the fact that my triceps contract synergistically at the same time to maintain that stable position. This is called an isometric contraction and is used to maintain things like good posture. Likewise, the power of the leg muscles in the pitching motion are tracked using force plates on the ground under the feet. The force generated by the foot landing down on the mound or pushing off the rubber is calculated and has been correlated to increased pitch velocity. But no one can conclude that the force of the foot hitting the mound is what is creating the ball speed, or if it is a symptom of it. This is where the current science has hit its limit. The EMG study in the current science has combined with the cross-training revolution and now emphasizes general athleticism to create two primary goals of pitching strength training. The first is that the primary training goal for strength training should be the development of the legs and hips, as those are thought to be the primary force generators. Secondly, that for the upper body, the goal should be not having smaller muscles do the work of larger muscles such as the lat. These were joined by other secondary techniques such as mobility training to allow the shoulder to have the range of motion necessary to transfer the forces. Implements such as weighted baseballs began to be used on the basis that throwing a heavier object would force the body to reorganize itself for greater force generation. This would transfer velocity benefits when throwing a standard baseball. Finally, the external rotator cuff muscles were also trained heavily to provide safe deceleration of the arm. This combination of training methodologies really came together starting in the last 10 to 15 years and has spread across most of the baseball world as the foundation of effective pitcher development. Why wouldn't it? This training approach has resulted, in conjunction with larger athletes being drafted in general, for the increase of a few miles per hour in the average fastball velocities. With fewer new draftees throwing less than 95 miles per hour, those numbers are set to increase again over the next decade. Young pitchers who could only throw 85 miles per hour with training are developing 95 mile per hour fastballs. On the other hand, during the same period, we have a massive, completely unprecedented increase in Tommy John surgeries that have struck down the careers of children and major leaguers alike. Join me for episode 27 next week. Remember, if you like the content, please like and subscribe. Your support makes this work possible. Also, if you want to jump ahead, please consider picking up the book on Amazon from the link in the description below. See you next week.